Next stop everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS, ready to talk some more classic Doctor Who with my wonderful partner in time and man who is still traumatized by the beatdown delivered on his Dallas Cowboys by yours truly's Cleveland Browns, Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
Yes, and I do have to give you a little story. So, we're watching the game, and Chris has moved out. He's got an apartment, so we went over to his apartment to watch. And when we were down by 4 touchdowns, Chris is like, "Okay, but we're really only down by 3 touchdowns because it's Cleveland, and they're good for at least one mess up that will result in points."
Yes, they are.
And so, but then when we lost, he said, I hadn't calculated Odell Beckham.
Didn't factor in the Odell Beckham factor.
Yeah, he's pretty good. I said, yes, he is. He is really good.
We were actually in talks, there's been some rumors about the possibility of trading Odell.
Wow.
Until this game. Yeah. And now it's just like, okay, why were you even considering this? Because where has this guy been all of a sudden? Now he's getting 3 touchdowns. So anyway, so we'll leave the rest for the sports podcasts.
Absolutely.
But I just kind of had to bring this up because, for one, my Cleveland Browns don't get to win very often. And 2, it's very rarely that we get to beat the Dallas Cowboys. But apparently this year, everybody gets to beat the Dallas Cowboys.
One last sports topic and we'll move on, right? Like we are playing the Giants who are winless. And so if friend of the podcast, Bob Bland, who says, okay, if either the worst offense in the league is playing the worst defense in the league, so we will if we lose to the Giants, it's official. We have absolutely the worst defense in the league. We'll see what happens. But luckily, the salve, the headache tablet, the relief of the poor experience of watching the Cowboys lose,
or the great experience if you're me.
Yes, was pulling up BritBox and watching some classic Who. That was my tonic to the loss.
All right, so for all of you out there, episode 203, we're going to be talking the Daemons. Not the demons, because it's spelled with this weird A-E.
It is a weird spelling.
And it's kind of a Gaelic lettering. But yeah, the Daemons. This one from the John Pertwee era, written by Guy Leopold, which was a pseudonym for producers Barry Letts and another writer that he brought in, Robert Sloman, to help him with this script. So There's a little trivia that because apparently the BBC kind of frowned upon producers writing their own scripts. And so to get around that rather, corporate edict, they came up with a pseudonym for the writers to get around that. And so, there's been others like Terrence Dix and others that had also used pseudonyms in especially in the John Pertwee era. There's a lot of these in the Pertwee era.
That's an odd rule, right? Because especially when you compare to the modern era, not just with Who, but with showrunners. Period. Like almost all showrunners are writers by nature. That you become a showrunner by being a writer, and you may hand out assignments, but you're assigned plenty of them.
Yeah, well, obviously that's something that's changed over time
Right.
because you've obviously had Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat, and Chris Chibnall, all three Doctor Who showrunners who have written as themselves for Doctor
Yes.
Who. And this one was directed by Christopher Barry and was the fifth serial from season 8 in 1971. And yours truly was like all of 2 years old, guys. Starring John Pertwee as the third Doctor and Katy Manning as the kooky but lovable Joe Grant.
Yes.
And we'll definitely talk about the third Doctor and Joe. Before we get into guest cast, of course, I got to ask Jesse, what's your general thoughts about this one? Because I'm guessing this is the first time you'd seen this one.
It was, and it was pretty good.
You got to see some more Pertwee, at least.
We did get to see some Pertwee, and I liked him. Joe reminds me a little bit of Donna Noble.
Okay.
Just a tad of it, and that cannot necessarily be a good thing, though I have grown to love Donna more than I have.
That's an interesting comparison. I've never thought about that, but you might be right. She's like the 1970s Donna Noble.
Yeah, but she's good, and it's a really comparison of watching this episode and like Zoe as a companion,
Yes.
right? Like
Yeah.
just night and day. But I thought it was a really good episode. I love the third Doctor. I do think the second Doctor, if I had to put on it, would be my favorite classic Doctor.
Okay.
But you're right. Every time I watch, Pertwee, I go, and like, God, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah.
This is really nice.
So would Pertwee be your second favorite classic Doctor?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I just, it's, they're really, he plays the Doctor really well, and he has a little snarkiness, a little bit slyness. I like how he plays, and I really love Unit. I think Unit is a solid companion as far as
Right.
supporting cast. I think that helps the show.
You think it complements with the E?
Yes, I do.
The third Doctor.
Absolutely, I do.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting that you put both Troughton and Pertwee above Tom Baker.
And
That's going to be a little controversial, I think.
Well, and I think it might just be because, I haven't watched enough. Like if I did.
Well, we've covered a lot of Tom Baker on this show.
And I love Baker. I just think it's because in context where they are,
yeah.
It is hard. It is just really, really Patrick Troughton when you think about the burden he had being the second and having to sell that it's the same. And I just like his a little bit of madcapness.
Okay.
It's fun.
No, that's good. I mean,
yeah.
To each their own, and I definitely respect that. I think that's cool that, and I like you taking your own unique stance on that.
Yeah.
All right. Guest cast this time, of course, we get the return of the great Roger Delgado as the very first Master. Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier once again. John Levine as Sergeant John Benton. Not Corporal anymore. He's a sergeant by this period.
Absolutely.
We get Richard Franklin as Captain Mike Yates. Stephen Thorne played Azal, our big demon from another world, I guess, the planet Deimos.
Absolutely.
And he's actually turns up in a later story in the John Pertwee era as the big bad Omega in the Three Doctors, which we have not talked about yet, but it's a pretty big story because, hey, it was the very first multi-Doctor story. And that's one we're going to definitely have to talk about one of these days. And he played the first Ogron in Frontier in Space, which was another John Pertwee story. And he played Eldrad, as in Eldrad Must Die, or Eldrad Must Live, in The Hand of Fear, which was the last Sarah Jane story on Doctor Who. And he reprised Eldrad in a Big Finish audio adventure sequel for Peter Davison's Doctor, called Eldrad Must Die. So he originated the character on TV and then reprised it for Big Finish, which is very cool.
That's very cool.
We have Damaris Heyman as Miss Olive Hawthorne, and she was in the movie Pink Panther Strikes Again, and she was also in one of my all-time favorite British sitcoms, The Young Ones. We had Alec Lindstedt as Sergeant Tom Osgood, who we'll talk about a little bit later.
I am looking forward to doing that.
And possibly his connection to a Petronella Osgood. We'll talk about that. He turns up in a Tom Baker story. He was Arnold Jellicoe in Robot, which was Tom Baker's first story. Arthur Stengos in Revelation of the Daleks, which was a Colin Baker story. So he appeared in 2 later stories. Stanley Mason played Buck, the gargoyle that occasionally wears tights, apparently. David Simeon played Alistair Fergus, the TV reporter that shows up earlier in episode 1. He turns up, he was actually in a previous story, from the John Pertwee era, Inferno, as Private Latimer. And he was also in the movie A Fish Called Wanda with John Cleese and Michael Palin and Jamie Lee Curtis. And he was also on John Cleese's Fawlty Towers, which is a beloved sitcom from the late 70s. And lastly, we have Don McKillop as Bert the landlord. And he was also in the movie An American Werewolf in London.
Okay.
So we've had some Doctor Who stars appear in that film, interestingly enough. All right. So trivia time. There's a lot of trivia in this one, but I'll try to get us through it really quickly. The Daemons started initially as an audition scene for Katy Manning for the role of Jo Grant. So they adapted that and wrote that audition scene into episode 4.
Okay.
So that's kind of cool. Kind of like a little bit of what happened with Pearl Mackie when she was cast as Bill Potts, and Stephen Moffat wrote that scene that kind of showed up as a kind of like a prologue a little bit, but also the bits of it ended up in the actual episode, the pilot that we've talked about a couple times here.
Yeah. Okay.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. Producer Barry Letts apparently wanted to write for the show and decided that a story dealing in black magic would be interesting as well as frightening. And script editor at the time, Terrence Dix, had some reservations about that. He said that people might view it as Satanist, so they reworked it as a strictly scientific story with occult themes to kind of placate the religious types, because sometimes you have to do that. Barry Letts intended to write the story himself, but he found himself short of time because of being a producer. So his wife suggested a friend of hers, Robert Sloman, who was a playwright and a journalist. And like I talked about, sometimes the BBC kind of frowned upon the production staff writing, so they decided on that Guy Leopold pseudonym. Now, also, the Master was originally intended to worship the demon in a church set, standing on an altar, but again, fearing that this might upset religious viewers, they set the scenes in a crypt instead. And then this was revised once again. The crypt was called a cavern, although the set clearly resembled a church crypt.
So what I find a little bit interesting, Charles, and to no one but you and I, but we do this for ourselves sometimes.
Yeah. That's our podcast. We can do what we want.
Yeah. There is a little bit of irony that this episode, they're worried about not offending any religious orders or Christian.
Right.
And the X-File episode that you are discussing this week with a friend of the podcast, Zan, has religious overtones, and they were trying to make sure they didn't offend any religious groups. So
free plug for Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast.
Yes.
So we'll be talking about that.
That was just, I know that wasn't planned, but it is kind of a nice little symmetry that both the episodes are about that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So check out Ghostwood later this week, because we're going to be talking about that. And I'll give more details about that at the end of the show, because you don't want to hear about that just yet. You want to hear the Doctor Who stuff. So let's see. Also, Damaris Heyman, Miss Olive Hawthorne, apparently had an interest in the supernatural herself and helped out during production as a unofficial advisor. A friend of hers was a practicing witch who actually commended the scripts for their accuracy. in the Wiccan arts. So just thought that was kind of interesting. And the clip of the Brigadier's
Very nice.
helicopter blowing up as it crashed into the heat shield, if that looked kind of familiar, is because, well, hey, that footage was completely swiped from the James Bond movie From Russia with Love.
Oh, there we go. Nice.
So another Doctor Who James Bond connection.
There is, yes.
And there's so many of those because they keep pointing them out, and I'm sure annoying people with that. And lastly, the incantation that the Master uses while summoning Azal, if you've listened to it closely, very closely, it's actually the nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb, said backwards.
Very nice.
And as well as using Damaris Heyman's name said backwards.
Good.
Kirk! He tasks me.
Yeah. Yes.
But, so yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And, so a little bit of an Easter egg. So if you missed it the first time, go back and watch it. It's kind of interesting.
Nice.
If nothing else, if don't believe me, there's like a Doctor Who transcript online where you can see how it was written backwards, completely backwards. Kind of like if you were Zatanna from DC Comics casting a backwards spell.
One of my favorite characters, so
Exactly.
Bonus points for bringing her up. Thank you.
Anytime. I'm always happy to bring up Zatanna. I'm a big Zatanna fan. All right. So 3 topics today. We do have a theme.
Oh, okay.
So it's been a while since we've done a theme, so I kind of thought I'd change things up a little bit. Had some time, and actually this one was pretty easy. So topic number 1, every little thing she does is magic. So every little thing she does is magic. We're going to talk about the Third Doctor. We're going to talk about Jo Grant and Miss Olive Hawthorne, our White Witch of the episode, of the story. So, Jesse, when in this story we have the Third Doctor being the big skeptic of magic. Jo's kind of like a wannabe believer, although she doesn't know that much about it. And so essentially what this story is the Doctor having to deal with something supernatural, although, of course, being Doctor Who, it's got an alien justification, an explanation. But in the process, they also come across this character, Miss Hawthorne, who is a practicing white witch. And so she gets to espouse her beliefs in the story. So it's kind of an interesting story from that standpoint, because it's not very often you kind of get the Wiccan perspective, or in this case, there's also a pagan perspective as well. So I'm kind of curious about your thoughts about the Doctor and Jo, and also what you made of Miss Hawthorne as a character.
So Miss Hawthorne was a hoot. I love that character. I thought she was great.
Mm-hmm.
She was interesting from the moment she appeared on screen.
Right.
She had a lot of great scenes. Some just really good chemistry with the rest of the cast. I liked her a lot. I liked this. Like I said, I think she reminds me a little bit of Donna, and Jo does, yeah. And so, and it's, the Doctor seems to find her, I don't want to, charming.
Yeah.
Like he finds her at times, her disbelief or her naivety just charming. He thinks this is, he has affection for her, but it truly is kind of like we often talk about. The Doctor picks up strays and they have like pets, they call them that. And I think this is it. But I like this. And I've already talked about how much I enjoyed the interaction with Unit. The Doctor's very smart. He has a plan. And I do love the fact that he's, okay, I don't believe in magic, but I do think something strange going on. And we can probably explain this by other reasons. And, of course, he knows it could be aliens.
Yes.
So I like it a lot. And
because
Who doesn't
aliens are
love
my thing. So yeah, that's where I'm going to
aliens
go
are my
with.
thing. Yeah, that's what I got to go
That's
through.
my wheelhouse. Yeah.
That's my jam. And you got to love a remote control car,
Yeah,
right?
Bessie.
Bessie is
Yeah.
just
So let's talk. So
that
let's
was
talk about
really
that for a
scene.
minute. So
Yeah,
now that you brought it up, so the doctor, in his explanation, Joe basically, they're talking about this televised program that from Devil's End, and it's essentially an archaeological dig that's supposed to that could possibly unearth something
right.
mystical, and they're broadcasting this live on television. It's almost like you wait for Geraldo Rivera to show up at this
I
point.
was just going to make that
Yeah,
same joke.
yeah.
Talk
So,
about timely references, you and me, right?
exactly, right?
Capone's fault.
The
Capone's
Capone's
fault.
vault, yeah. Look it up on the internet, kids. It's pretty amusing, and it was basically the beginning of Geraldo Rivera's downfall as a TV reporter.
I think that is a fair statement.
Yeah. So, so Joe's talking about the broadcast and talking about, well, hey, maybe like this is the age of Aquarius after all, because remember, again, this is 1971, right? So so the whole hippie thing was like in full force by this point.
Absolutely.
And so the doctor just really isn't feeling that. He's like, look, I know that's it. I know that's, there's no such thing as magic. And she's like, well, how do you know that? And he's like, I just know, okay?
Yeah.
And he kind of proves his point a little bit because all of a sudden Bessie starts driving around the compound.
Right.
And the doctor is kind of like trying to scold Bessie, like jokingly going like, now Bessie, I've told you not to drive around the compound. Right. And the Bessie's horn honks a couple times. And Joe is just stunned by this. She's like,
yes.
It's like, what? What did you do? It's magic. And the doctor says, no, it wasn't. It was, I have this device right here. It's a remote control. So I remote controlled Bessie just around the thing. And she's kind of annoyed at this point, like, oh, you're just like, you're making fun of me.
Yeah, you're mocking me and making fun of me. Yeah.
And before all this, Mike Yates had walked in. He's like, okay, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. And
so he's stunned by this.
And that's why it is a little bit of
so basically the doctor was having fun at their expense.
Right. A little bit of condescending, a little bit, just a tad with Joe.
Well, he's kind of like that through most of this episode. Actually, most people are, if you notice.
Yeah.
Joe takes a lot of abuse in this story. Like the doctor's for like 90% of this episode, he's putting her intelligence down.
Yes,
because she's reading the map upside down at night.
Yeah.
And or like she doesn't like she's making presumptions about magic, and the doctor's calling that out, or like he calls her out for not knowing Latin. Like when they mentioned that, Magister. Well, Joe, I guess you didn't study Latin because you would have known that Magister is Latin for master. And so he's kind of putting her down a little bit.
He is. I agree with that, and I
kind of being a dick about it.
I think you're right. I think it is, and I didn't enjoy that part of it at all.
Now the good thing is though, Jill kind of rebounds because at the very end, she's the one who saves the world from Azal.
Yes.
So because of her sacrifice, wanting to sacrifice herself, because she believed in the doctor.
Yeah.
So the doctor kind of has to eat a little crow at that end.
A little bit.
Yeah. Although he wouldn't admit it, of course.
And they all kind of at the end have fun dancing around the maypole, which is a nice imagery. And
unless you, of course, consider that a maypole is kind of phallic imagery used in pagan rituals. But hey, okay.
Let's go past that.
Let's go.
It was kind of the scene where the villagers all want to burn the doctor, and like, oh, he's a warlock, he's a witch, and the doctor's kind of looking at him like, what are you guys doing? And even he a little bit has some arrogance, and even that, like, you guys are so, I'm going to scare you right now, that,
Yeah.
when they're going.
Well, he kind of gets bailed out at that because Miss Hawthorne
Yes.
comes to his rescue and talks about him being like this great wizard, like
Yeah.
quid quid quo or whatever. And amusingly, that's Latin for the various tenses of who. So she's
that's nice. I did
so
not
so
catch that.
so that was very subtle. So
Yeah.
I didn't take Latin. I took German in high school. So this was news to me too. So I found that during my research and I thought it was interesting.
I also read that somewhere, they that was based on a real experience when they were traveling to some remote.
Yeah.
They had the map upside down, and so that's why they kind of wrote it into the script.
Right.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, that whole thing had kind of a like. I kind of mentioned this at the end of last week's episode. The 1973 film The Wicker Man.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it, but it's kind of like it's a little bit of a horror classic.
Okay.
Starred Edward Woodward and Britt Eklund and Christopher Lee.
Okay.
And was essentially about this cop who's called in to investigate this young girl's disappearance at this remote island.
Okay.
In the UK. And apparently, as it turns out through the course of the film, it's revealed that all the inhabitants of the island are pagan worshippers. Like they're and they end up sacrificing the cop at the end of the movie, and in this big giant wicker statue. But it's very much like a lot of the stuff, like the stuff with the maypole and kind of like all that the Celtic Celtic magic and that Celtic rituals were observed in this movie as well. So if you've seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But it's very interesting because the Daemons and the Wicker Man are both around the same time period. So I thought that was
okay.
It's pretty interesting. So anyway, just thought I'd mention that, Ro, while we were
good.
kind of on that subject of the maypole and all that.
Yeah, very
and
good.
the doctor, like being about to be sacrificed by the villagers. So, the Miss Hawthorne, she helps the doctor, and there was that great sequence where she and Benton kind of help him out, kind of give the villagers like this impression that the doctor has magic powers, like when in fact it's actually Benton with a gun with a silencer on it, shooting a weather vane or shooting out a street lamp.
That was a really nice sequence that she was able to.
Benton, a good shot apparently.
Yeah, it was kind of like a behind the scenes, right? Right, like, as often when you know how the magic trick is done, sometimes you can be disappointed.
Yeah,
that was because at first, I since I've never seen the episode, I wasn't sure what was going on, and to see that was very funny and I liked that a lot. Yeah, she was a very cool companion, or would-be companion, a nice.
Would you
character.
consider her an almost companion in this episode?
I think so. I think it was someone. I think she would be once again. If I'm sitting there going, oh yeah, I could see more of her in the TARDIS. That would actually be very, with her perspective of, believing she's a white witch, understanding the supernatural the way she is. Yeah. That would be interesting to see her explore space and see because as we find out, some of the myths that they're talking about were because of these aliens being on Earth for years and years and years, for eons.
I think it'd be interesting if they kind of brought back the character. They would probably have to do it with a different actress because the actress Damaris Heyman is very old right now.
Right.
So, so they probably would have to recast the role. But I think it would be interesting to see that character again with a modern doctor.
Yeah, I think so too. I really like that idea.
Okay.
Or a similar character, like maybe the character's daughter.
That's a good idea. Like a niece, maybe, or something.
Niece, that would be very good.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. So before we move on, I wanted to get your thoughts. What did you think of Joe's sacrifice for the doctor? And because she's about to be sacrificed for by the master to Azal, and the doctor is given this choice, or like Azal has to choose between the doctor and the master, and the Azal's talking about like, well, hey, why don't I just give all my power to the doctor instead?
Yeah.
And he's refusing it. And the master is trying to like say, oh, he's a liar. He's not worth it. And, you should kill him. And Azal's about to do that. But Joe kind of steps in at the last minute and says, you can't kill the doctor because he's a good man and I believe in him. And so it's her faith that is what rebuffs Azal's power and feeds it back on him, causing him to go all explodey.
Which makes it even more, because the way he's treated her this episode makes it even more really admirable.
Right.
It reminded me a little bit.
Well, just that she's a better friend to him than he is to her, apparently.
Yes. And, it reminded me just a little bit of the Alan Moore classic. There was during the Superman era, there was going to be another change. But this was the first big change. John Byrne was going to take over Superman, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well,
and Alan Moore kind of wrote a two-story of wrapping up that age. And there was a
Whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where Lana Lang is talking to Jimmy Olsen saying, we may not be as, and I can't quote it, but we may not be the most famous friends, but no one loved him any less than we did. And she goes to sacrifice herself. And I thought just a little bit of that. Joe Grant, like, I may not be the most intelligent companion. I may not be the most brilliant or fascinating, but no one has loved and supported the Doctor more than I have. And I just thought it was a nice moment.
And I think that's a great observation, because I think Jo is one of the most loyal companions. She stands by the Doctor no matter what. And we saw that, when we talked about the Sarah Jane adventures, when she makes her return, she's still loyal to the Doctor.
Incredibly loyal, and I loved seeing her in
no
the
matter
modern
which
era.
incarnation. Yeah,
that actress is
Katy Manning,
very charming. Yeah, and she was really good, and in that modern era, and it did this. So when I say I'm not saying I dislike her as a companion when I say she reminds me of Donna. Just it is that kind of a little bit of
kookiness.
Kookiness, and kind of she's an every woman.
Yes.
Right. She is.
She's not like a scientist or like a reporter or like or some like warrior like Leela.
Yeah.
She's just kind of like that average girl.
Yeah, and I like
average
that.
woman.
I think it was good. Yeah, it was good. It was nice.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Unless you had anything else.
Nope.
All right, topic number 2. Do you believe in magic?
Nice.
So it's pretty easy to guess the theme on this one. That, of course, by the Lovin' Spoonful.
Yes.
From 1965. Coming at you on the countdown. And so in this one, we're going to talk about the Brigadier, Sergeant Benton, Captain Yates, Sergeant Osgood, and Unit. Our boys in Unit. So our brave men in Unit who die often for Unit. So and we get some of that here as the Brigadier and Sergeant Osgood and some other Unit fellows run afoul of a heat shield surrounding the town of the village of Devil's End, and meanwhile, Sergeant Benton and Captain Yates are trapped inside, and so we kind of got to have two forces on both sides of this, and trying to deal with the crisis going on because of the Master raising Bach and trying to gain the power of Azal. So what'd you make of Unit in this one?
So the Brigadier
Yeah.
is one of the coolest characters ever.
Yes, he is.
He's in that green sweater. He looks good. Like at the very end, I mean, I love that look. That he's
Yep.
in that. That is such a good look. At the end, where he makes it. I think I'd rather have a pint.
Yes.
Like when everyone else goes.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
they're
He
dancing.
and Yates are like go for a pint.
Yeah,
instead.
let's go for a pint.
Yeah.
I have a quote that he did that I just think is so deadpan.
Yep.
When he's talking about everything, I'll get to that when we do our quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nothing phases him. It's the Doctor. Hell literally may come through.
Yes.
But you know what? I'm gonna do my duty. I'm going to, British stiff upper lip. I'm ready to do whatever I need to do. I love this character, and I love his unflappedness, and he is very loyal to the Doctor as well. At the same time, will call the Doctor out when he thinks the Doctor needs to be called out.
Yeah.
And at this point, isn't the Doctor sort of his employee?
Technically, as a scientific advisor, but
yeah.
But do you really think the Doctor's going to put up with that? No.
No, but you kind of have that dynamics of it.
He tries
really
to be.
good.
He tries
Yeah.
to be, but
Yes.
but fails every time.
Yeah.
But you talked
sorry.
about the Brigadier being unflappable, but
Yeah.
he was pretty flapped when he goes off to this dinner party, and you saw him all decked out in his dress uniform or
Yeah.
whatnot, and he finds out he calls in for looking for Yates or Benton or somebody,
Yeah.
and everybody's gone
Yes.
up to Devil's End,
Yeah.
and so he's just like, what the actual F, guys?
Yeah.
Where's everybody? So it's
so
I go to one dinner party and you guys
Yes.
all split.
See, so I don't think in other words, the distinction I make in that is when the
As a manager,
unexpected
you have to
comes in.
appreciate how the Brigadier felt.
Yeah. Yeah, all right, but that isn't that he's unflappable. It's just like, hey, can I not count on my team?
Right.
What the heck? I also, I'm watching this episode and this series of episodes,
Yeah.
and I hear Osgood, and I went, what?
Yep.
Huh?
Ears perked up, didn't they?
My ears perked up, and I went, okay, this has to be. And then I read somewhere that Moffat wanted it to be, but because of other backstories with Osgood, that it may not have worked out. But in Jesse canon, that is absolutely our modern Osgood's ancestor. I don't know if it's his father, grandfather, uncle, but I just love that. I love that we had this character, and that when they had to create a great character, they used that name.
Yeah. Well, so we're introduced to Sergeant Tom Osgood in this. Like I said, played by Alec Linstead, and if you notice, the Pertwee era Osgood has the similar horn rim glasses and is a bit of a science geek.
Yes, absolutely.
And so now there wasn't any hint of an asthma inhaler, but
no, didn't see that.
Asthma,
yes.
like a relief inhaler. But you have to, there's obviously no official confirmation that Tom Osgood is the father, uncle, whatever, of Petronella Osgood that we know from modern era unit. But you have, as far as headcanon goes, I think it's perfectly acceptable to go ahead and invent that in your head and accept that, because until we get a better explanation, why the hell not? Why not make them related?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love
because
that.
They're so similar. They both have
yeah.
horn rim glasses. They both work for Unit. You can kind of see that, well, maybe Petronella, got into Unit because of her father being in Unit once upon a time. So she's like a legacy almost.
Well, and the brigadier's daughter,
Right,
right?
exactly. So,
Yeah,
so it's kind of a
it's
generational thing. So
it is a family tradition.
so
Absolutely.
you had Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart and Tom Osgood, and then you had nowadays Kate Stewart and Petronella Osgood.
Yeah.
So,
So yes,
so as far as I'm concerned, yes, it's canon.
I absolutely agree.
So, and Next Stop Everywhere canon supersedes all known canons. Just saying.
Absolutely. There you go.
Even Doctor Who's canon. So, because
that was
that's how we
great.
roll. And so that was fun. And but poor Tom Osgood in this, because Tom has to build this device that goes against everything he knows about thermodynamics and mechanics and whatnot. And he's having to take it all on faith. And that faith is basically coming from the Brigadier saying, you need to build this because if the doctor says it's going to work, it's going to work. So build it. And has little problems along the way. So it's kind of interesting, and especially with the doctor kind of getting annoyed that Tom Osgood isn't picking up on this.
Yeah, it was nice.
What'd you make of all that?
I love the doctor.
It kind of blows up in his face at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The doctor's interaction with Unit is just fun. He is very quick to use them when it's to his advantage, but when he doesn't need them anymore, like, just get out of my face, like, go away.
Right.
I'll let you know when I need you. They have a very fun relationship to watch. And I could see why when the modern era brought back Unit that people were like, yes, this is great.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the
now you can appreciate it.
Yeah. I can see why this is such a great cornerstone of the Doctor Who universe.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously a lot of older fans like myself, we have a kind of an affinity for this because, it's something we've watched, for decades now.
Yeah.
And the idea of bringing it back in the modern era was just, bring it on. Bring it on. We love it.
Absolutely.
We're all for it.
Yeah.
So we're all, and, obviously I think Kate Stewart and Osgood, turned out to be a great Unit team.
Well, I mean, for
Peter Capaldi, and it was great. And Matt Smith, and
I'm sorry to be cranky Jesse, right? But instead of Class, give me a Unit spinoff
right?
with Osgood, right? Stewart, and you can similar themes of Torchwood, kind of investigating. I'll take a 10 episode miniseries of that anytime.
Well, would you take a Big Finish audio series, because there is one?
Yes. Oh, of course. There's everything that you could want in Big Finish.
Yes. So if that's what you want, well, now you got to go to bigfinish.com, right? And look that up. So, and by the way, Big Finish, we're still waiting for a sponsorship.
Absolutely. Yes. We need to reach out. Yes.
I'm calling you guys out. We give you all the love in the world. We just want a little back. That's all.
Absolutely.
All right. But we still love you anyway. All right.
Yes,
all right. Anything else about Unit?
Nope.
Okay.
Just good to see him.
And we can talk about, maybe when we talk about Bach a little bit, we can talk about Unit's fight with Bach. So,
yes.
All right. So on that note, topic number 3, he's a magic man.
Nice.
So talking about Heart from 1975.
Yep.
He's a magic man, mama. And this I want to talk about the Master, a.k.a. Reverend Magister.
So,
in Bach and Azal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So as I continue to give out-of-date references, the song from
I'm doing
the
classic
60s,
rock, so it's okay.
Yeah. The song from the 60s, Harper Valley PTA, where the mom goes to the PTA and mentions everyone's secrets.
Yeah.
Look it up, kids, if you do. Was that the Master in front as the, he's the, the religious guy, and they're in that meeting and it's like, what about those books? Are you going to get those straightened? will your wife ever come back from her visit to her sister? And they're all looking like, oh, he knows our diva secrets. He knows our diva secrets.
Yeah.
What a great scene. I just love that scene.
Yeah, that was the master in that scene where Jesse's talking about. We had the master trying to get everybody on board for Team Azal, and the villagers are kind of rebelling a little bit. They're like, well, you promised us power, so where's the power? Why do we need you? And the master kind of gets a little snippy with them. He's talking about like, well, hey, I only need like, I just need you guys to follow my will and obey me, and otherwise, like, I don't know why I'm dealing with you morons. And they kind of resist him a little bit. And then all of a sudden, Bach shows up.
Yeah.
And disintegrates a guy, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And suddenly everybody kind of quiets down. And the master's like, okay, so as we were saying.
Well, and,
taking over the world. Yeah.
This is similar to our previous story where, and now, of course, the master is not human. He has more confidence in himself that he can manipulate an alien versus in last episode we had the human think they could control the Cybermen. But there is an arrogance to the master that he can manipulate these people. He can call in for service, and control take that power. It was a nice subplot. I love the idea that that because of these aliens that had subconsciously got part of the mythos of a demons and a devil figure, similar to Childhood's End, the Arthur C. Clarke classic novel.
Okay.
Where they did. So, yeah, I thought this was a really nice, it's always cool to see the master, and it's also really cool, like he's trying to do, to get power, to get this. There is a purpose to this master that at times I find disturbing in the modern master, especially this latest master you and I have talked about, that he just seems to be crazy. Yeah. And I like the master to have, it's okay to be a little crazy, but there needs to be a method to his madness.
So you prefer just a more Machiavellian, sinister master.
Absolutely.
And I tend to agree with that a little bit, because I'm really, the more I watch Delgado, and just get reminded in episodes when we talk about episodes like this, I love his sinister master. He's the schemer. He's the planner. And, we got a little bit of that with John Sim, and we got that a little bit with Anthony Ainley. Yeah. But Delgado was the originator. Delgado was the guy who's essentially like, in this one, and that's how he was created, was essentially to be Moriarty to John Pertwee's Sherlock Holmes. And we've talked about that. And that's the way he was written. I think that's the way to write this character.
I agree. I do.
And I kind of wish the writers in the modern era would kind of get back to that.
I agree.
Because I think when it's fun to see the master doing crazy stuff, but when you overdo it, and, something gets lost, I think. You stop taking the master as seriously.
And
as a serious threat.
And I'm drawing a blank to the actor who's, I could pull it up in IB, the current master. I really like
Sacha Dhawan.
Yeah, Sacha. I think he is a great actor.
He's great.
And I think he plays. I just think I would have given him a little more, just tone down the madness just a
mania.
Little, and more of a purpose behind it. Yeah. What is my ultimate goal?
Now, granted, in the master in this one does some crazy stuff.
Oh yeah, because we know he's going to do that.
Because essentially he's calling up, for all intents and purposes, the devil, although it's actually an alien. But so did it weird you out? Now that I think about it, did it weird you out seeing the master doing black magic spells and almost like the leader of a coven, ready to do a human sacrifice, and just kind of and doing all these incantations and whatnot. Did it strike you as odd, or did it work with this particular master?
It worked, Charles, and it reminds me that when the writing is good, Doctor Who can tell any story it wants to tell. Peter David, a writer that you and I both admire.
From comics and science fiction, Star Trek, a lot of Star Trek and whatnot.
He is one of his favorite characters is Lee Fawkes the Phantom.
Yes.
And he said Lee Fawkes the Phantom, because this is a generational. You want to tell a pirate story, you can tell a pirate story. You want to tell a Western, you can do a Western. That you can do any kind of thing with the character. Same thing with the Doctor. Because of the different timelines, the way the TARDIS can go. I mean, this was a straight bargain with the devil.
Yeah.
Horror story that I don't know if you specifically picked this because it's October and it's spooky month.
I did. It's not spooky month. It's just Halloween season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John Oliver.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, they did. Yeah. Although see local news making like all this stupid, repetitious, like unoriginal spooky
season.
Yeah.
And spooky season.
Yeah.
So it worked for me. I thought it was really well done, and the evilness of the Master works well. You could see him making the bargain with Faust. I would sell my soul for power. And so, I liked it a lot. I was very happy with that.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad you were. I love Delgado. He was just, obviously, he was just kind of like rolling with it. He just seemed like he was enjoying himself, doing a little different take on the Master. And you notice, obviously, when it comes down to it, the Master is still kind of like that. When he's trying to, face with this much more powerful being, he's still trying to be the manipulator. He's trying to work it and try to convince Azal to give him that power.
Yeah. Once again, as I just go crazy on references, right? Like Lex Luthor manipulating Brainiac or something, like the Master is so confident in his abilities, in his intellect, in his superiority, he just does not believe that anyone is going to better him, and he believes he can manipulate and control anyone and bow them to his will. Also, I had forgotten that this early on, they established that the Master has that hypnotic power,
right? That
mental power. Because remember, the modern era, when Jodie's Doctor was showing that, I was like, wait, that's new. And you said, no, this is kind of a flashback to what they've done in the past. So I kind of like seeing that.
I did too. I really enjoyed that. I thought, I thought it was a very cool idea to have him do that. And so let's talk a little bit about Bach and Azal for a little bit. Mm-hmm. So Bach was this gargoyle that almost kind of like kind of like a herald almost to Azal.
Yes.
The stone gargoyle that gets animated.
Mm-hmm.
When the Master starts doing his ritual at the end of episode 1. And so he comes across and he comes alive, and essentially all he does is he kind of runs around, hopping around
in gray pajamas,
and he's kind of like gray spandex, so it's like he's a stone gargoyle, but all of a sudden he's wearing like gray long johns, and running around, but he's also disintegrating people.
Right.
So he's an actual threat because he can essentially just wipe you off the face of the earth rather easily. But so what did you make of Bach for one, and then what did you make of Azal who, we're told was like this very tiny demon alien that can grow to ginormous size. And, like there's a great moment when Yates and Benton arrive in the helicopter in Devil's End, and they see these giant hoof prints
Yes.
across the field.
Yeah,
And
that was a nice moment.
Yeah.
And
so what did you make of Bach and Azal, first and foremost?
So you have to. There are a couple things if you're going to explore classic Who, you have to accept.
Right.
You have to accept that because this was built to be episodic, and almost like the old serials, where you ended a cliffhanger every time to keep you going. You're going to you aren't getting a one and done episode of like Modern Who, or a 2-episode crossover, like 2-parter. The story is going to be extended a little bit longer than maybe it necessarily needs to be.
Yeah.
You just hope that there's enough story to carry it, and in this case, it absolutely was. The second thing you have to accept the fact is that costuming and special effects, we're grading on a curve.
Especially with Doctor Who, yes.
Yes. So that is 50 years ago, right?
Well, I mean, this will be
71.
71, so it'd be almost 50 years.
Yeah.
So 49 years right now.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the guys in gray long johns with a rubber mask, but
and wings on his back, flopping them.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was a fun villain.
Yeah.
You kind of have to go with it. You go with the flow.
Right, exactly. It's Doctor Who, you roll with it, like we've talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
So what did you make of Unit's battle with Bach? Because
that was a good battle.
They had to give Unit something to do, so they had him basically attack Bach for a good couple of episodes.
Yeah, that was nice. It was good. I like seeing, I talked about this last. I like seeing Unit in all their glory. They're efficient. They're strong. They are not the Keystone Cops. You mentioned that last time, and I like seeing that. Now, that doesn't mean sometimes they don't make mistakes. And
I think John Taggart mentioned that, by the way. But
yeah. I knew we had talked about it in the last episode. So, thank you, John.
I just want to give credit where it's due.
No. I appreciate you not having problems with, not giving credit where credit. I appreciate that. I liked it. I thought it was a good battle, and it was entertaining. It was an entertaining series of episodes.
Yep. So there's a great moment where, and I thought it was actually kind of cool, where Benton brings out this bazooka, or Yates or one of them grabs a bazooka and destroys Bach, but then Bach reforms, and they did it by reversing the image of him blowing up.
That was a nice little moment.
So I thought that was kind of cool. All right. And Azal looked cool. Thought he was and it's Stephen Thorne. He's got a great voice. And it's one of the reasons I think they brought him back for Omega in the Three Doctors, because Omega has this big booming voice. And I really like to hear that, really, rather, as Azal in this one. So, all right. Anything else about the Master, Bach, or Azal, or anything else in this episode?
I just think it was a really solid episode. I enjoyed it. I'm glad you picked it.
All right, great. So, this is kind of like one of our fill-ins, because obviously for Dave Proctor, who was not able to join us this week. So, Dave, we're thinking about you and appreciate you. So hopefully we'll be doing that at the beginning of the year, talking Carnival Monsters.
And just to tease,
yes,
we do get to hear David's thoughts on the episode.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
So don't you think that Dave wasn't at least participating this week?
That's right. Absolutely.
So we get you one way or another.
Yes.
We're gonna get you. So.
All right, you are very musical today.
Yes, I am.
I'm loving it.
Yes, I am. All right. So favorite quotes. What's your favorite quote of this one?
So I've got 3 or 4.
Okay.
I actually only have 3. One, when the doctor, he's talking about the the sayings and the chants, right?
Yeah.
He goes, roughly translated, it goes,
The spells. Yeah.
yeah, the spells. Translated, it goes, close your eyes, my darling. Well, 3 of them at least.
Well, you mean you're talking about, like, yeah, Joe asked him, like, was that a spell you were talking about? He's like, no, it's an old Venusian lullaby.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
But my favorite by far is when the Brigadier is getting up to speed.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, so the doctor was frozen stiff at the Barrow and was revived by a freak heat wave. Benton was beating by invisible forces. The local white witch claims she's seen the devil. And Captain Gage, yeah, I know it sounds a bit wild. I just love that scene.
Yes.
I loved where he's just like, okay, let me get this straight.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It was great. Yeah. How about you? You got a couple?
Yeah, let's see. At the beginning where that interviewer, I guess, is talking to the professor.
Right.
Or no, I'm sorry, it wasn't the interviewer. It was like another one of the crew guys, the TV crew guys. And he goes, Professor, suppose something does happen. And Professor Horner's like what? And Harry's, the guy, says, personal appearance of you-know-who. And I like the way they do you-know-who, kind of like, you-know-who in Harry Potter. And the professor says, well, use your initiative, lad. Get your chatty friend over there to interview him.
Yes.
Captain Mike Yates talking to the doctor, where Mike says, I see. So all we've got to deal with is something which is either too small to see or 30 feet tall, can incinerate you or freeze you to death, turn stone images into homicidal monsters, and looks like the devil. And the doctor replies, exactly.
Yeah, I like that one too. That's very, very good.
And let's see, just 2 more real quick. Miss Hawthorne talking to the doctor after he manipulates Bessie around. She goes, you really are a magician. And the doctor says, I'm sorry to disappoint you, madam, but if I were, I'd hardly need your assistance in extricating me from this sacrificial gift wrapping.
That was a good line. Yes, I remember smiling at that.
And then lastly, I have to mention this because it's kind of an iconic quote for the Brigadier. So Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart says, Jenkins, chap of the wings there, 5 rounds rapid.
Nice.
So,
very good.
Very
Absolutely.
famous Brigadier quote.
Oh, I love it.
So I thought I'd mention that. All right.
All right. So
rating.
I was gonna let you go first. What's your rating?
All right. My rating is, I'm going to give this one a solid 8 out of 10. Stone gargoyles and tights.
Very good. We are in sync. I am giving it 8 out of 10. Reticles carrying a crystal ball.
Okay.
Because the scene when she takes her purse and knocks the guy out was just wonderful. I love Miss Hawthorne. This was a fun one, Charles.
Although I got to think if she did hit him with that thing would have cracked.
Yeah, I know. But it was so great that she had she pulled the purse out and held up across the crystal ball. It was good.
Yeah. All right. So reverse the polarity. Now we're running a little long already, so I'll just hit the highlights. But so if you like the Daemons, and hope you did, because it's a really cool story, I'm going to recommend The Witchfinders, the 8th episode from Series 11 in 2018, written by Joy Wilkinson. And this one, as we talked about not too long ago on the podcast back in 2018, the 13th Doctor and her companions arrive in 1612 Lancashire near Pendle Hill, and they find this old woman accused of witchcraft being drowned. So the Doctor tries to save her but fails, and then the Doctor tries to pretend to be the Witchfinder General, fooling this local landowner and magistrate, Becca Savage. But King James shows up, and then basically the Doctor finds out that the cause of the witch hunt is of alien origin. And so essentially you have supernatural means being explained by aliens. And the Doctor gets accused of witchcraft and is almost drowned at one point, but the Doctor escapes underwater and notices how Becca Savage couldn't bear touching the tree used to drown her. And we find out that Becca was infected by an alien entity while chopping a tree down atop the hill, and the entity reveals itself to be a queen of a race called the Morax. And the tree that Becca chopped down is actually a disguised alien prison for Morax war criminals. But the Doctor uses parts of the tree to save King James, restore the prison, and the other Morax get forced out of host bodies. And the Queen, though, refuses to leave Becca's body, but King James kills them both. The following day, the King James tells the Doctor that everything is going to be erased from history, so we won't have to worry about that. And then he watches in surprise as the group leaves in the TARDIS. The end.
Nice. Okay. Very good.
So a very fun episode, and very much like the tone of the Daemons a little bit.
Okay.
Highly recommend that.
Good. All right.
All right. Listener feedback. We got a couple. One from Holly Mack, one from David K. Proctor. Dave Proctor, as we know him.
Yes.
Because we're cool like that.
We are.
So do you want to read Holly's or do you want to read Dave's?
You pick. I've got both of them up.
Okay. I got Holly. I'll go Holly because she's first.
Okay.
So Holly says, "Hey all." Hey, Holly.
Hey, Holly.
"The Daemons was a good story. I have to say that I really enjoyed the character of Miss Hawthorne. She proved to be the voice of wisdom numerous times throughout the story." Yes, she did. And if only people had listened to her, right? The scene in the beginning with the Doctor using a radio remote control to control Bessie and get a rise out of Joe was pure Third Doctor. The whole unit gang is back, which further adds to my enjoyment of this story. Loved Benton in this. Yeah, we didn't even talk about how Benton was essentially getting hit on by Miss Hawthorne throughout most of this episode.
That was a nice little. I like.
She kind of
that.
drags him off at the end, to do this fertility ritual.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I'm saying after the credits roll, there may be a chance they're, Lottie dying.
Yeah, we'll see. So Holly continues, "I got a Christmas Invasion vibe from the Doctor being sidelined in bed for part of the story after being caught in the cave-in / explosion at Devil's Hump. He's really lucky that he didn't start the regeneration process unless the extreme cold had something to do with that." Yeah, essentially because he was kind of like flash frozen.
Yeah, exactly.
So you put him back in the freezer and you can thaw him out later, I guess.
There we go.
All right. Later on in the story, once everyone figures out the Master is behind the goings-on with Azal and trying to get through the heat shield is done well. The look on the Brig's face when Benton tells him over the radio that the Master's behind it was priceless. I think the Master learned that sometimes when you call on things to gain more power / control, you get more than what you ask for. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. So thank you, Holly. Yeah, it's a simple case of be careful what you wish for.
Absolutely.
All right.
So Dave Proctor, or officially known David K. Proctor.
Yes.
Who can't relate to someone who is stuck in one place and cannot travel? I do like the Third Doctor. My Doctor is the Fourth Doctor, and when I couldn't find his episodes back in the day, I seemed to prefer John Pertwee over Peter Davison. Perhaps my local channels only had so many episodes, but I didn't see very many Davison episodes.
We'll have to do something about that.
Yes, you also have to love the Master, especially dressed as a priest. The devil was a fallen angel. Did the Master fight against the good, the Doctor, and then cast out of heaven, space and time? The Doctor certainly considers space, time and space travel as paradise. Nice little points there, Dave. Science versus supernatural, the premise of many
So
great
does that
stories.
make the Doctor Lucifer by that analogy? Because he was cast out of heaven, space-time?
No, well, he's saying the Master was.
Yeah, but the Doctor was too, right? Exiled on
okay.
Earth.
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah, science versus supernatural.
If you're going to do that analogy, yeah.
I like it. The premise of many great stories, people taking advantage of gullible people or of their beliefs, a tale as old as time. This makes a true classic. The Devil's Hump, so many jokes, I won't go there. Bessie was one of the displays at Doctor Who The Experience, so very small, I guarantee it would fit fully in the bed of a pickup. That's interesting. Hadn't thought about that.
Yep.
The gargoyle that was an alien was interesting. It better be careful around churches. It might meet up with a weeping angel. I see what you do there. Very nice. The sunken spaceship weighs 750 tons because it was shrunken but not reduced in mass.
That's right.
This concept was completely lost on the Ant-Man movies. He once ran down the length of a handgun, and they kept cars and tanks in their pockets, and they haul around buildings like luggage. Stan Lee should have watched more Doctor Who. Very nice.
So that's something DC Comics did better because the Atom, when he shrunk down, was always about altering the mass got displaced.
Yes.
Now, it's assumed, though, I have to bring this up because I'm a comics geek. So it's assumed that the mass was displaced to the microverse when Ant-Man, Scott Lang, shrunk down.
Well, and I can remember those early, the classic Adam stories
Yeah.
watching that Ray would he talk about I'm going to increase my mass so that when I'm punching him, it would have the full force of my 180-pound body or whatever.
Or
So
with, the quantum realm or whatever MacGuffin that Marvel wants to use.
yeah, as Dave continues, so they are trapped in a dome. Clearly, the writers of The Simpsons watch Doctor Who.
Hmm.
The only technical guy is Sergeant Osgood. I'm curious if there is any relation to the modern day Osgood.
Well, we talked about that.
In our world, it is.
Yep.
Angels and Demons cast as
So
aliens.
mote it be.
Yes. The show makes you think. What more can one ask of entertainment? I've heard that you're born in 1000 AC or BC. Things one can't explain become miracles or gods or demons. But in modern times, people say alien abduction or visit. Perhaps this truth can be explained by the perspective of the beholder. Joe had the fastest warboard change in the history of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite quote was, "Do you know what you're doing? My dear chap, I can't wait to find out." That is a good line.
That was a good quote. I should have stole that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Stay well, and sorry I couldn't join you all this week. Thanks, David K. Proctor.
No apologies necessary, Dave. We know how the work thing kind of conflicts
Yes.
sometimes, so it's perfectly okay. Just feel bad that you weren't able to join us, but we're going to try and get you back on. So
Absolutely.
just got to be a little more patient for you, I guess.
So, hey, if someone wants to be like the cool kids and give us feedback, how can they, Charles?
So everybody, if you want to be like Holly and Dave, and please do, write to us at at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com, or that's nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at nextstopsmg on the Twitter machine, Facebook, of course, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, and Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere podcast. Jesse, how about you? Where can they reach you?
Well, you can hear me. You can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can hear me talking about music and all kinds of other stuff on Set Lusting Bruce. And this week, if you go over there, you can hear David K. Proctor. He wasn't able to make our show, but several weeks ago, he joined me on Set Lusting Bruce, and we talked a little bit about his love of music. And there was a couple of Springsteen songs that are specifically about police officers, and David listened to them and gave his perspective, as David is a police officer. And so I think it was a fun conversation, and if you guys have liked David's feedback, I would go and listen to that episode, even if you're not a Springsteen fan and don't normally listen to Set Lusting Bruce. It's nice to hear Dave, and I think it was a really fun episode. And Charles, how about you? Where can they hear some of your fine work?
Well, of course, you can reach me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere, Doctor Who, Sarah Jane Adventures, Torchwood, all kinds of comic book sci-fi news of my other podcasts I do for Southgate Media Group, including, the Fandom Zone podcast that I do with Jesse, and where we talk all kinds of comic book TV shows. We just recently talked The Umbrella Academy, and we've talked Stargirl and Watchmen and Krypton, and so I hope everybody would check those out, and I'm sure we'll talk more in the near future. And then Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, whom you've heard here on the podcast and other places where we talk, obviously, Twin Peaks and David Lynch stuff. But right now we are in the 5th episode of our 6-part Twin Peaks actors who have appeared on The X-Files, a little retrospective. And this week's episode is going to be, as Jesse said, Revelations, which is from X-Files 3rd season, and we're going to be focusing on the actor Kenneth Welsh, who played Wyndham Earle, one of the big bads on Twin Peaks. And he appears in that story as Simon Gates, this guy who goes around looking for a real stigmatic and kind of burns people with the heat of his hands. So,
and as we've shared before, I have not ever taken the time to sit through and watch all of X-Files.
Mhm.
And so this has been an excuse for me I've been watching the episodes you guys are discussing and having a blast.
Well, I hope you're enjoying them.
I've enjoyed the episodes, and I love sending you guys feedback, and I appreciate you guys reading them and giving me feedback back. It's kind of, it is always fun to talk Doctor Who with you, and I love doing that. But it's just kind of fun for a change of pace to just be the feedback guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like.
So if you want to hear Jesse's feedback, please, check out Ghostwood, because we have him writing in. We've got Holly writing in, Holly Mack, and also a certain DJ Nick writing in as well. So gotta tune in for that, right? If nothing else. And Jesse, I hope this gives you the encouragement to go back when you have some time and to do the X-Files properly, season by season.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad that we're down to only one more episode after
right?
this one.
It just kind of went by like that.
I was kind of like, hey, Charles, Zan, can't you guys just pick another few from that to go? So yeah.
It's very tempting because I'm really enjoying it too. So we're having a lot of fun. That's kind of why I think DJ Nick wanted us to do an X-Files podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
But you probably have to talk to Zan a little bit about that.
Well, yes.
So I didn't work on her to continue. So, and also I should mention Titan Talk, speaking of DJ Nick, Titan Talk, the Titans podcast that I do with Jesse and DJ Nick, where we talk Titans and Doom Patrol. Nick and I just finished Doom Patrol Season 2 not too long ago. We're currently on hiatus. We're waiting for when Titans Season 3 finally starts production. So it may be a while, but if we get a bunch of Titans news, we'll probably talk about it in a special upcoming episode.
Okay, good.
If we get enough news to fill up an hour or so.
Okay, good.
Just want to give everybody a heads up what's going on with that. Otherwise, next time on Next Stop Everywhere, episode 204, as we jump from the John Pertwee era to the Tom Baker era with State of Decay.
Ooh.
With special guest companion, once again, John Takis. This was one that John had specially requested to talk about. John's a bit of a horror buff, especially when it comes to classic Doctor Who. And so this is a kind of another one that's great for the October season. And this one we find out that the Time Lords have had a long-standing feud with vampires.
Ooh, so that'll be fun.
So that'll be fun. And yeah, this would be toward the end of Tom Baker's run in his final season. That's a period we haven't talked much about here on the podcast. So it'll be kind of good to go back into those final episodes of Tom Baker's run. And a great one to talk about, written by Terrence Dicks. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. And I hope Jesse enjoys it.
Absolutely.
Jesse, any final thoughts?
No, I'm now sitting to think. I'm now calculating how I can convince you that we take a break from Next Stop Everywhere. We take a break from Ghostwood.
Break?
And the three of us do a X-Files rewatch with me as the newbie, you as the too experienced, and we start from episode 1 and going forward.
Dude, I'm only down to 2 podcasts now. The only thing that needs a break is Jesse taking a break from Set Listing Bruce, because you're doing like 3 of those a week now?
Yes, I know.
So I've got the time. I can Vic that in. But yeah, we should do those.
We should talk about that offline. That would be fun.
All right. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. Definitely come on back for State of Decay, John Takis, next week, episode 204. We're going to be here. Hope you're going to be here. And we'll see you next time right here, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.